Between 2010 and 2012, the CIA watched helplessly as its entire spy network inside China was systematically dismantled. One by one, the sources vanished. Some were arrested, some were shot, some disappeared without a trace. At least 30 people, gone. And the most terrifying part, the CIA had no idea how China found them or whether the person who gave them up was still inside the building. This is the story of the worst intelligence failure in CIA history. A story about a mole, a compromised system, a hunt that lasted a decade, and a question that the US government still hasn't fully answered. It started quietly, the way the worst disasters always do. Sometime around 2010, CIA handlers in Langley began noticing something wrong. Their sources in China, ordinary people, Chinese citizens who had risked everything to pass information to the United States, were going silent. At first, it didn't seem like a pattern. Field work is dangerous. Sources get cold feet. Sometimes communication just fails. But then a second source disappeared, then a third, and then the pattern became impossible to ignore. By 2012, the scale of what had happened had become clear. Between 18 and 30 CIA sources inside China, some of the most carefully cultivated intelligence assets the agency had been identified, rounded up, and eliminated by Chinese intelligence. Several were shot in the courtyard of a government building in Beijing, in front of their colleagues. As a message, to understand how catastrophic this was, you need a comparison. In the 1980s and 90s, two of the most notorious traitors in U.S. history, CIA officer Aldrich Ames and FBI agent Robert Hanssen, gave the Soviet Union the identities of American intelligence sources. Dozens were killed. It was considered the darkest chapter in American counterintelligence history. What happened in China between 2010 and 2012 rivaled both of them combined. Inside Langley and the FBI's counterintelligence division, a quiet panic set in. How had China done this? How had they identified so many sources so quickly? There were three theories, and they would tear apart the relationship between the CIA and FBI for years. Theory 1. There was a mole. Someone inside the CIA was selling names. Theory 2. Sloppy tradecraft. Agents communicating in unsafe ways. Human error on a catastrophic scale. Theory 3. China had hacked into the CIA's own covert communications system and read everything. The FBI backed Theory 1 hard. The CIA initially pushed back. Accepting the mole theory meant accepting that someone inside their own walls was selling their people to be killed. That's not a comfortable conclusion to reach. But the FBI wasn't wrong to look for a mole, because they already had someone in mind. His name was Jerry Chun Shing Lee. Born in Hong Kong, raised in Hawaii, he joined the U.S. Army in 1982, served for 4 years, then went on to build a career that would define his entire life, the CIA. He joined the agency in 1994 as a case officer. His specific job, recruiting foreign spies to betray their countries and pass secrets to the United States. He was trained in covert communications, surveillance detection, and asset handling. He was, by all accounts, very good at it. He served in China. He understood how Chinese intelligence operated. He knew what the agency's sources looked like, where they met, how they communicated, and then his career plateaued. He'd risen to the position of second secretary at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing and stalled. No promotions, no path forward. In 2007, after 13 years of the agency, he resigned. He was, according to multiple people who knew him, deeply disgruntled. He moved back to Hong Kong, got a job with Japan Tobacco International, investigating smuggling and counterfeiting. That job ended in 2009. He tried to start his own business. That failed too. By 2010, Jerry Lee was broke, frustrated, and living in one of the most surveilled cities in the world, a city where Chinese intelligence recruiters were always watching. In April 2010, 2 officers from China's Ministry of State Security met Lee in Shenzhen, the city right on the border of Hong Kong. They were direct. They knew who he was. They knew what he knew, and they made him an offer, $100,000 in cash. Right then, and a promise. We will take care of you for life. He took the money. Over the next several years, Lee received at least 21 separate requests for information from his Chinese handlers. Names, Locations, details about covert facilities, the real identities of CIA assets. He deposited what would eventually total over $840,000 into his bank accounts in Hong Kong. And back in Beijing, CIA sources began to disappear. In 2012, Lee and his family traveled from Hong Kong back to the United States, stopping in Hawaii and Virginia. What he didn't know was that the FBI was watching him. Agents secretly searched his hotel room in Honolulu. What they found was extraordinary and damning. Two small, ordinary-looking address books, handwritten, but inside them, the real names of CIA assets in China. Phone numbers, meeting locations, details about covert facilities, addresses of CIA safe houses. The exact same information contained in classified cables Lee had written years earlier while at the agency. He kept it all, written down, in a hotel room in Hawaii. Here's where the story gets strange and a little maddening. The FBI interviewed Jerry Lee, looked him in the eye, and then let him leave the country and return to Hong Kong. He wouldn't be arrested for another 6 years. Why? The FBI hasn't fully explained. Some officials believe they were building a larger case. Others suggest the CIA was reluctant to formally implicate one of their own. Whatever the reason, for 6 years, the man carrying notebooks full of CIA asset identities walked free. But here's what makes this case genuinely unsettling. Jerry Lee may not be the whole story, because at the same time investigators were hunting a mole, a separate and deeply uncomfortable truth was emerging. The CIA's communications system was broken. After September 11th, the CIA had developed a covert internet-based system for communicating with sources in hostile countries. It was designed to be untraceable. Agents could connect via ordinary-looking websites, commercial sites, nothing suspicious. The problem? The system had been built for operations in the Middle East, and it was imported wholesale into China, one of the most sophisticated surveillance states on Earth, without being redesigned. And China broke in. Chinese intelligence analysts discovered that the sites could be identified using nothing more complex than carefully crafted Google search queries, a technique security researchers call Google hacking. The entire network consisted of over 350 websites, and once you knew the pattern, they weren't hard to find. When U.S. investigators finally reviewed the evidence, some concluded that the collapse wasn't caused by a single mole. It was a combination, Jerry Lee selling names, and China independently cracking the communications architecture that was supposed to protect the sources he didn't name. A former American intelligence official described it as a confluence and combination of events. In other words, the CIA didn't lose 30 sources because of one mistake. They lost them because of several failures, stacked on top of each other, over years, and nobody caught any of them in time. Jerry Lee was finally arrested in January 2018 at JFK Airport in New York, returning to the United States again. By that point, the FBI had been investigating him for 6 years. He appeared in court. The charge, conspiracy to deliver national defense information to aid a foreign government. In May 2019, he pleaded guilty. When asked by the judge to describe his actions, he said simply, "I conspired to gather and send secret information to the People's Republic of China." In November 2019, he was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison. But the indictment contained a notable caveat. His defense attorney was quick to point out that nowhere in the government's court filings was Lee directly accused of causing the deaths of CIA sources. The government never formally charged him with the killings. They couldn't prove in a courtroom that the names in his notebooks had directly led to the executions. The families of the sources who were killed in China will never know for certain whether it was Lee's notebooks, China's hacked websites, or both that took their people. But what we know for certain is that at least 30 people who risked their lives to help the United States government were identified, arrested, and killed by China. A former CIA officer received $840,000 to betray them. He was found with their names written in his handwriting and allowed to walk free for 6 more years. The CIA's own communications system was so badly designed that China could identify the sites with a Google search. And a joint CIA and FBI investigation, which ran for years, cost tens of millions of dollars and ended careers, never fully resolved whether it was the mole the hack, or both. The FBI opens a new China-related counterintelligence case every 10 hours. That's not speculation. That's from the director of the FBI, which raises the only question that actually matters. How many Jerry Lees are still out there?